Welcome to Flowgy. In this video, we will see how to use the virtual surgery tool for surface deformation. With the surface deformation tool, we can organically deform the anatomical structure of the patient by means of a surface defined by us. This practice is very useful and saves us a lot of time, for example, when we want to correct a shift in the nasal septum. Well, having said that, let's see how the surface deformation tool is used. Of course, the first thing we need is to load a CT scan and its segmentation, like this one for example. The surface deformation tool is an advanced feature of the polyline tool. If you don't know how to use the polyline tool, you can see our YouTube tutorial on how to use the polyline tool, in which we explain in detail how to get the most out of this useful tool. Well, to start working with the surface deformation tool, let's go to the Auto Polyline panel. For this example, we will first define the contour of the right nasal septum. Then, we will define the left contour, and finally, we'll show different options on how to join them, thus creating a selection of the nasal septum that we can deform through virtual surgery. We will create the polylines between the frames 300 and 200. So we go to our start frame at 300. To create our polyline, we only have to mark 2 points, where the polyline starts and where it ends. Flowgy will automatically calculate and define all the intermediate points, adapting them to the anatomical contour. While holding down the Shift key, we click with the right mouse button onto the point where the polyline starts and click on the point where it should end. Now we have to define how many intermediate points we want to generate. The more points, the more level of detail. What does this mean? It means that the polyline will adapt much more precisely to the anatomical contour, but it will also mean that when doing visual surgery, we'll have to work with many more points, which will make the work somewhat more laborious. The default option is 15 points. This option usually works very well in most cases. So for this example, we are going to leave it like this. This 0.3 defines the spacing between points. Just like the notes option, the default values work perfectly fine for most cases. So we are also going to leave it like this. Good! Let's generate the first polyline. As we can see, Flowgy generates the polyline on the external contour of the septum, which is not what we want to do in this case. To readapt the polyline to the interior contour of the septum, we have to press the Edge button, again from point 1 to point 2. The polyline is generated by default to be closed, as we can see here. Our goal for this example is to create an open polyline on the right contour of the nasal septum. So how do we open the polyline? It is very easy. Just go to Settings and disable the Closed Polyline option. There we have it. The hardest part is already done. If we see, after having generated the polyline with 15 points, that we need to be more precise, there's always the option of adding points later. Just remember that the new points are added consistently to all the polylines we have generated. If we are happy with the polyline we created, the only thing left to do is to generate a couple more between the remaining frames up to 200. Here we are creating the next line in frame 280. Here we are repeating the steps. First, mark the beginning and end of the polyline with the Shift and the right mouse button. And second, generating the polyline. And we move to the next intermediate frame, for example 260. Now repeating the process in the frame 240. And in the frame 220. And last but not least, in the frame 200. This one we have to retouch a little bit. And now we are already done with this last one. To get a better understanding of what we have done, let's quickly go to the information panel. Here we can see that we have created 6 contour polylines or master polylines. Flowgy has automatically filled the intermediate frames with a total of 101 polylines in the range we defined. It is possible, as we see here, that some polylines generated by Flowgy do not adapt completely to the anatomical contour. To correct this deviation, we only need to generate a new contour or master polyline in this frame, as we do right now. As of now, we have already defined our polyline from the right contour of the nasal septum. Now we will generate the 3D surface to proceed with the virtual surgery. As we already learned in a previous video, in order to generate the 3D model, we must first create the bounding box. In this case, unlike what we learned in the How to do 3D surgery with Flowgy tutorial, Flowgy can automatically generate the bounding box based on the position of our polyline. To do this, we just have to check the From Poly option and click the Sync with Contour button. And so, we already have our bounding box ready. It goes from frame 300 to 200, as we defined it in the polyline. Now, we only have to click the 3D model generation button, and we already have the surface of the right nasal septum contour. Here in blue we see the contour polylines we have created. We can go from one to the other by holding down the Control key, and in red the polyline of the frame in which we are. To be able to start with a virtual surgery, we have to define how we want the surface deformation to affect the anatomical structure. The option Air, right to blue, as shown in the graph, where yellow is air and pink is solid, allows us to convert everything that the polyline covers to the left into air, and everything that goes to the right of the polyline into solid. The option Solid, right to blue, works the other way around to the previous option we just saw. as indicated by the color graph. We also have the Air Always option that allows us to fill any movement we make of the polyline with air. And last but not least, we have the Solid Always option, which will add solid matter in any movement of the polyline. As for example, we want to modify the shape of the right nasal septum contour a little. Let's work with the option Solid, right to blue. To start modifying the surface, we only have to press the Start button and start modifying the surface by moving the points of the polyline, as we see here. Thus, we add air, or in other words, remove anatomical structure from the septum to give it the desired shape. And so, we expand the structure of the partition outwards, making it wider in this case. The modifications we are making in the structure do not only affect this frame. As expected, the changes are extrapolated to all the intermediate polylines created by Flowgy. Like you might noticed, we have modified the structure by means of independent points. But what if we want to move several points at once, saving a little bit of work? For this, Flowgy offers the option Node to Move that allows us to increase the number of points that we can move at once. This number tells us the points we are going to move at the same time. The points will always move in reference to the point we select and move. Values between 0 and 2 are the most recommended, but in the end it's up to you. This value determines the percentage of movement of the points that move with the reference point. The higher the value, the greater the movement, and the lower the percentage of movement of the points. This is an advanced option. For most cases, the value of 0.25 will be more than enough to deal with any kind of surface deformation. The results of the virtual surgery by surface deformation can be seen in real time, as well with the anatomical structure, thus generating a more realistic feeling of the changes we make on the surface. When we are satisfied with the modifications, we will have to press the End button to end the virtual surgery by surface deformation. Perfect. Let's store the polyline we just created and quickly generate the polyline of the left nasal septum outline. As we already know, to create a polyline, we go to the start frame, in this case the frame 300, and keeping the Shift button pressed, we click with the right mouse button where the polyline has to start and where it has to end, and then we generate it. At this point, we will proceed to join both polylines. As we can see, the beginning of the polylines is marked in blue and the end in yellow. To join them, we only have to select the color combination we want. In this case, start with the start. That is blue. with blue and we hit the merge button. For the moment, we are only going to join the starting points. Now we just have to repeat the process, as we have done before, the creation of the contour polylines. Once we have created all the polylines and closed them with the starting points, we can see the visualization of the surface we have created. To definitely close the surface, we just have to activate the option to close the polyline. And here we have the surface of the partition closed and ready to make the deformations that we consider appropriate. If the polyline is closed before the virtual operation starts, we must specify the material of which the surface we have created is made. In our case, the inside of the polyline is going to be solid, since it emulates the nasal septum. With this, we could already start deforming the surface as we saw a few minutes ago. And this is how we can modify an anatomical structure which we have previously defined according to the needs of the patient, with the surface deformation tool.